This is an ancient symbol that was found on a granite pillar in Abydos, Egypt, in a temple called the Osiris Temple. Why is it that this object, this drawing, which is on the 100-ton pink pillar in the middle of that temple, is not in any picture books or history books anywhere or archaeological books anywhere? It took me 10 years of research to go through all the books that were written on the Osiris Temple, from the first papers that were published from the archaeologists that found the temple to eventually, all the papers and the books that were written. None of them had this picture in it. The way I got this picture is that a friend of mine went out there and took it. Okay? Why is it that this picture is not in there? I'll tell you why. Because this graphic is not carved into the rock. It's not etched into the rock. This graphic is actually burnt, laser burnt, into the atomic structure of that pillar. Now, when you think of ancient civilization 5,000 years ago, you don't expect them to be doing laser burn on, hard surfaces at high levels of accuracy. Okay? Archaeologists have a really hard time explaining these things. When they can explain something, usually the tendency is not to popularize it. So they leave it out. Some of these symbols that are in the Osiris Temple, there's no writing in all of that temple. Not one piece of writing. All there is these things. There's a few of them. Some of them are chipped. Well, the laser burn is through the rock. So that actually, even if you chip it, it still appears on the rock. We have no current technology to reproduce this. That's why you don't find this in history books. The other thing is that the Osiris Temple is 50 feet below all the other temples at Abydos. The archaeologists tried to say, oh, the Egyptians dug 50 feet and then started building. Well, the Egyptians never did that to any other building. And actually, when the geologists went there, they went, no, that's not the case. The building was there, and sedimentation piled up beside it. Well, when they calculate how long it would take to get 50 feet of sedimentation, that temple is no longer 4,000 to 5,000 years old. That temple is 9,000 to 12,000 years old. Maybe 10,000 years old. That's why archaeologists really don't like that temple. In fact, they very rarely discuss it.
Why did they make that radical faux pas? This error. Why does Horus in the horizon, the Sphinx, is he gazing due east and not at his celestial counterpart, Horus of the horizon? Could it be possible that these people who align monuments to 5% of a single degree make a mistake of 28 degrees? Why is Horus of the horizon in the wrong place? Again, are we asking the question in the wrong way? Is it possible that Horus of the horizon, that Leo is not in the wrong place, but at the wrong time? Is there a time when he would align perfectly with his counterpart on the ground. In this way. Well, there is. And for that, we must consider another mechanistic event happening in the sky with the precession of the equinox. We've seen how the precession of the equinox causes Orion's belt to seesaw up and down. Well, what we have also is an effect influencing the position of the sun at the spring equinox, the station of the sun at the spring equinox along what we call the zodiacal belt or the ecliptic belt. You're only seeing half of it here. There is 12 constellations across which the sun appears to travel in its annual course. But because of the precession of the equinoxes, the position where the sun is during the spring equinox. Now, for example, in the Pyramid Age, it would be about here, near the constellation of Taurus. But because of precession, the constellation appear to move like a carousel, so that the point of the spring equinox changes with the background constellation. Let me explain this in visual terms. If you were to stand in front of the Sphinx today, in his pose, looking due east at the spring equinox, today, this is what you would see. The sun rising due east on the spring equinox, and the background stars are Pisces and Aquarius. This is the position, the point of the spring equinox. Soon, the constellation of Aquarius will appear to shift so that it occupies the background behind the sun. This is why we say that the age of Aquarius is soon to come. At the time of Jesus, it was the constellation of Pisces. It would have been behind here. This is why the Christians used the iconography of the fish. It was the beginning of the astrological age of Pisces. With the Egyptians, they knew this very well, because here you see the sunrise at the spring equinox in 1400 BC, the time of Tutankhamun, in the constellation of Aries, the ram. And we know that the iconography of the ancient Egyptians at that time was intensely to do with rams. The alleyways at Karnak and at Luxor are ram monuments. And here is the constellation of Taurus. In 2500 BC, that constellation would have been behind the sun. In 2500 BC, the age that the Sphinx is supposed to have been built according to Egyptologists. And at that age, the age of the bull, the Egyptians knew that this was the age of the bull, because they started the so-called Apis cult of the bull, the cult of the Apis bull. We know that the ancient Greeks also did that in the time of the Chronos civilization. They knew that this was the age of the bull. They would have built an equinoctial marker to match the age. They did not. They did not build a gigantic bull. They built a gigantic lion as an equinoctial marker. This is what they had in mind. A marker to mark a certain age. What is that age? Well, it is precisely at the time when the constellation of Orion marks its first time, 10,500 BC. You will remember that as the constellation of Orion strikes the meridian in 10,500 BC, in this configuration, the sun is rising due east at the spring equinox. This is what you would see at precisely that age, marking the age of Leo. Now, what makes this an unlikely coincidence is this. When the sun strikes the horizon, due east, were you to turn 90 degrees and look at this meridian direction, the direction that the pyramid builders have insisted we should look at, we will see the constellation of Orion striking the meridian. We have exactly a lock happening and only happening in 10,500 BC. This is what you have. The constellation striking its low point in 10,500 BC at the meridian, mimicking the pattern that you have on the ground with the Sphinx looking due east and with his representation in the sky.